We can do some quick introductions of folks who are joining me this evening. So again, thank you for joining us. And I am Janet Schultz, Superintendent. And my team, I can't really see everyone on here because of the scroll. So just maybe popcorn yourself. I'm gonna, I know Mr. Hari is on here. I'll ask him to introduce himself.
Good evening. My name is Hitesh Haria, and I'm the Associate Superintendent for Business Services.
Hi, I'm Nancy Castro. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Eileen Chen, Executive Director in Educational Services.
I'll go next. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Molina, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services. Thank you for being here this evening with us.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shelley Velasco. I'm the Coordinator for Elementary Instruction. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Tracy Cataldi, the District Coordinator for Social Emotional Supports. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Kevin Rocap. I'm Coordinator of Data Reporting and Educational Technology.
And good evening, everyone. My name is Leticia Precedo, and I'm Parent Engagement and Coordinator. Thank you for joining us this evening.
We're going to go over some information this evening. I think I captured everybody, right? We'll go through, and we're going to go ahead and get started on the information. I'm going to give you some updates around just where we are with COVID-19 and the vaccinations for the first part of our webinar. And then Mr. Hari is going to talk about the funding that we have from the federal government that we have until, it's one-time funds, and we have until September 30th, 2024 to spend those funds. And so we do have a survey at the end that we want you to take. We'll also be putting a survey out to all of our families so that you have time to take it as well too, to get your feedback. And you can also put any questions you have and also any feedback that you have in the chat, and we will capture that in our notes as well too. We're doing the presentation this evening in English and Spanish simultaneously. So we'll pause for the slides when so that you can read, in your native language, the information as well too. So we will go ahead and get started, and we can go to the next page. So I already went through our agenda with that. We're going to go through just real quickly where we are in Pittsburgh with our case rates and vaccination rates, some of the updates that you may have heard on the news around vaccinations, answer any questions around that, and then we'll transition to the area of the ESSER funding. And again, those are the one-time funds that we have to use until September 30th, 2024. And Mr. Hari will go over the requirements of the different ways that we can use the funds. I saw a question in the chat about, can we use those for after-school programs? Yes, we can, for after-school, for academics, things like that. And he will go over more of the details around that too. And again, during this time, please put any questions in the chat. I'll pause, in between transitioning from the COVID and the vaccination updates to see if there's any questions on that before we go to the funding piece. Next slide. And then this is a chart that if you've attended these before, you've seen this, and I just wanted to point out that we have everything going down, which is nice. That's what we want to see. And so this looks like it is not quite the most up-to-date one. It's actually gone down even further. And so we're now below, we're about 250 cases, and the county is about 190 or so. So it just keeps going down, which is great to see. Next slide. And then these are the vaccination rates that are going up. So again, great to see that those are continuing to climb, and encourage everyone. We do know from the California Department of Public Health and the health officers that the vaccination is, for those who are eligible, is the best way to be protected against COVID-19. You can see that in our county, we're a little over 80% vaccinated on average, and in Pittsburgh, we're a little over 70% vaccinated right now. And next slide. And then here's our data for those who are on their way to be vaccinated, meaning that they've probably received one of the 2 shots in that sense. And you can see that Pittsburgh is in the mid 70s and the county in the mid 80%. So really pleased to see the numbers going up. We have been able to partner with the county to have some clinics, vaccination clinics at our schools, and we'll continue to do so as the county has the resources to host those clinics. We are always happy to host them. Next slide. And then this is something that we update at least every Friday and sometimes more frequently, but on our website, we update the cases of positive COVID-19 that are currently on our school sites. And so under students, you can see that we, as of the end of last week, right, as of Friday, we have currently 18 positive cases. That means that they are not at our school site now, but they were at our school site during a time when they were positive for COVID-19. And right now we have no staff. This is a great resource to look at if you ever have any questions, or you want to see what's happening at your child's school if you hear about anything. And so one thing that has been really encouraging as the numbers go down, we do the contact tracing for anyone who's positive, and everyone at the school works together to call anyone who was in contact with that child or staff member within the regulations of county health department. And what we're finding, not just in our district, but across all the districts, is that it's not happening where someone at school is giving it to their people right next to them and spreading at the school, that these are cases that are happening out in the community and then they're positive when they're at school. So I just want to thank everyone for all of your support in making sure our scholars are masked and coming to school and really being great partners with us as we've implemented all of the precautions. Next slide. And then these are just a couple quick updates. And so you may recall that when we started school, we decided to take a little more time to have some additional measures in place in Pittsburgh. We said, let's do it through the end of September and see how it's going. And the rates are coming down. We saw how they're coming down, but we are going to continue our current practices through October and then again, reevaluate. And so what that means is that it's a state mandate that everyone has to be masked inside, but we also do the masks outside. Right. And we're also going to make sure that we're going to continue to limit the visitors to the school site too. We're going to do this through October. We see that the rates are coming down and we want to keep them coming down. And again, thank you all for your support with this. We are going to continue. Oh, go back. Sorry, the next one. Thanks. We're going to continue testing our athletics, our scholars who are participating in the athletics who aren't vaccinated. And we also now have free COVID-19 testing at each school site 1 day per week with a company called Predicin. It is free. It's from 7:30 to 4. This is for our employees and our scholars only, right? It's not open to the public for the community, because we have to focus on our scholars and our employees with this. And then it's 3 days a week at Pittsburgh High School with that. And I'm happy to say that if you were looking forward to the football game, we are back to selling regular tickets and attendance for the football game, starting with the game Friday evening as well. We are going to limit concessions and have just 2 food trucks and then sell some bottled waters. Another update is that board meetings are allowed to continue virtually if the board members feel it's a safety issue in terms of the number of people, the spread. They could do virtual like we were doing before. Our board has been back in person since June, and they're going to continue to do so, but they will be able to, if they choose to, do it virtually. As a district, regardless of this, we already decided to continue to live stream our meetings. It's been great having more people watch the meetings, and you can do public comment virtually. One other piece of news is that the state assessment that all of our scholars have to take in the state of California and the certain grade levels, you've heard the CASP test. Well, for this year, they've shortened it. So last year we were able to use our own internal assessment. This year, we are able to use everyone's in the state is using the same thing again, the CASP test, but it'll be about half the length of time as it was in prior years. So I think that's good news, so that it's less time that they're, that they have to do those mandatory tests. And that's for the CASP test, and that's for the English language arts literacy and the math test. And those are that's the one that's given in the spring at like 3rd, 5th, 7th, 11th grade. And so that will be about half the time. So a couple of quick updates, just wanted to make sure you're aware. So the new update is the governor on Friday morning announced that he's doing a mandate for vaccinations to be required for COVID-19 for all pupils and employees who attend private or public schools in person through K through 12. And we don't have the details yet, but he said that it will be phased in according to the grades. So for example, because the vaccination has emergency approval for 12 to 15 and full approval from 15 on up, the Pfizer vaccination, once that Pfizer vaccination has full approval from the federal government for ages 12 and up, then he will have a reasonable length of time, and we don't know what that will be yet, when the students, our scholars who are in grades 7 through 12, will have to be vaccinated in order to attend for in-person learning. And then once it's approved for K through 6, then following that, they will have to have proof of vaccination for COVID-19 for in-person learning. So the California Department of Public Health will determine what sort of exemptions and the details of this. He just announced this on Friday, so we expect to get more details in the coming weeks. Right now, through the conversations that we have and with the Department of Public Health, it seems like that requirement won't start until July 1, 2022 for the 7th through 12th graders, but it really depends on when they get that federal approval for the vaccination. And there's no timeline for grades K through 6 yet. And then the adults who work in the schools, all of our teachers, staff, et cetera, will have to follow the same standard as well. He has encouraged other individual counties and school districts to accelerate it, to move faster on this. You may have seen some of that in the news. That is not something that we're going to be doing here. In Pittsburgh Unified School District, we are going to follow the state mandate and that timeline. And we're going to switch to the Spanish slide and just give you a minute to go through and read all of that. And then please put any questions in the chat. If you have any questions so far, I've been going through a lot of information. And you can put your questions in English or Spanish. So I just open up the Q&A and I see a couple of questions with that. And so I'm going to go ahead and address the ones about the vaccinations first. Are we going to do more vaccinations? We are. If the county has the resources, we will hold more of the clinics. They did tell us that when the vaccination is approved, for the younger children, that Pittsburgh's one of the districts where they will take one or two of our elementary schools and do a vaccination clinic there as well too. So as soon as we get that information, I will put that out for you all, and we'll have those clinics as much as we are able to with the county health. And then the other question about how will we verify vaccination status without violating the HIPAA rules? That's an excellent question. And so as the governor said, this would be the 11th required vaccination. So in school districts, we already have to collect information. Could be, you know, depending on what grade level your child is in, you may have had to turn in the Tdap, you know, your measles. So those vaccinations and that information, we do already collect that and have a process for doing that without violating any of the HIPAA. So that's a process that we would then implement for the COVID-19 vaccination as well. And then another question, is at-home learning an option when the vaccine is mandated? So school districts will have to provide an option. It will most likely be independent study, but we will see if the legislature, and of course, homeschooling has an option as well too, would be an option as well too, but we will provide independent study. And so as we get closer to when we know the exact date, we'll be collecting information similar like we did this year to see what people's interest is and what they think they're going to be doing so that we can plan accordingly for having enough teachers ready for any independent study. If our kids are vaccinated, can they bring in their proof now? Another great question. Not right now. I think we need a little bit of time to make sure that we have our system set up because it is a new vaccination. So I want to make sure that we have everything set up for how we collect the data to document it before we have you bring that in. But thank you. And that's a great question to do that. Mr. Santos, what happens if a student or the parents refuse to be vaccinated? So as the state mandate, as the governor has said, what will happen is it's a requirement for in-person instruction. So that means that your child would then have to receive instruction through independent study or another allowable form of instruction that they allow, but not anything in person. And again, they will have some exemptions, the same exemptions that apply for vaccinations now. And then we will have to wait to see what any other exemptions will be allowed depending on the timeline and what the California Department of Public Health does within the mandate. So as you may know, currently there are religious and medical exemptions that are sometimes allowed depending on the circumstances. But again, as we get more information from the state and from the Department of Public Health, I will pass that on to you and we'll do a lot of communications and then do more of these webinars to answer the questions. So the governor announced this on Friday, and so it's new, and then we will move forward from there with any other information that we receive in the upcoming weeks. Okay, any other questions? This slide is in Spanish, you're correct. The one before it, you must have just joined us, was the same information in English. So we're doing both at the same time. And yeah, the school board already voted to continue having the virtual option for attendees before the option was expiring. So we're able to sort of seamlessly continue with that and have the virtual public comment. Okay, we'll look at the next slide. So if there's no more questions, and of course, if there's anything, other questions on the vaccination or COVID-19, please put them in the chat or the Q&A, and I will go ahead and answer those throughout as well too. And we can stop again at the end for more of questions. And right now we're going to transition to Mr. Haria. And again, these slides are going to be in English and Spanish. When there's a lot of information, you're going to see one slide in either English or Spanish first, and then the same information in English or Spanish after, and we'll pause so people can have time to read through that as well too. And this is the part where he's going to explain the funding that we have now and the different uses. And then as you're hearing him talk, put in any questions, but also put in any ideas of things that you as parents are seeing that are working well, or that you would like to see more of, or something different in addition to that you would like to see, so that we can capture those thoughts. And then at the end, we're going to put a link to a short survey that we would like you to take as well too. All right, I'm going to transition it to, oh, I saw one more question in the chat, sorry. Are the COVID testing in the schools now, are they mandatory? The testing is not mandatory. It's mandatory for employees, but not for the students, right? So it is mandatory for employees who are unvaccinated or who didn't submit their vaccination. And that means that they have to test once a week. And we receive that information through human resources. The testing is available for our scholars. And if a scholar is placed on modified quarantine, they do have to test 5 or 6 days while they can remain in school, but they do have to take a test on like the 5th or 6th day within that time period. And so then this is a way to help ease all of the logistics around taking that test as well too. Okay, sorry, I just saw that before I transition, and now I will transition to Mr. Haria.
Good evening, parents, and welcome. We have the distinct pleasure of talking about some money that the school district is eligible for. And, you know, with COVID, the federal and state government has been very helpful in providing some additional funds in order for us to continue educating our students. And so there's something called the American Rescue Plan, which was approved by Congress on March 11th, 2021. And with this plan, they have something called ESSERIII that they're providing funds for. And ESSERIII stands for Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief Funds. And this will be the third round that they're doing for us. With this additional funding, it's one-time funding, which means they're only going to giving it to us one time, and it's for a period of 3 years. And they want us to do two things in order to qualify for this funding. One, we have to have a safe return to in-person instruction and a continuity of services plan that's available on our website. The second thing we have to do is put together an expenditure plan. So how are we going to spend these additional funds? And because we're getting these funds from the federal government, they've told us that they require us to address students' academic, social, emotional, and mental health services, as well as any opportunity gaps that existed before or were exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. So with that, the federal government has given us specific ways that we can utilize this money. I'm going to give about 2 minutes, 1 minute for this slide. And then on the next slide, it's the same slide, but in Spanish, just for you to read through and see what the government is saying we can utilize these funds for. If we can go to the next slide, please. So those two slides will give you a pretty good idea as to what we can utilize this ESSERIII funding for. If we go to the next slide, what you'll see is that we have about $17.6 million that would be available over a 3-year time frame for our students. And they are looking at 3 different areas to be able to spend this money. The first area or bucket is called Strategies for Continuous and Safe In-Person Learning. The second bucket would be addressing lost instructional time. And we have to spend a minimum of 20% of the entire 17.6 million on lost instructional time. It can be more than that, but at a minimum, it would be about 3.5 million. And then any remaining funds that's not utilized for the first 2 would be in the remaining funds. So all in all, a total of 17.6 million over a 3-year period. So the next slide, we'll start looking at strategies for continuous and safe in-person instruction. So some examples of how we could use this money or continue to utilize this one-time money. Firstly, it's increasing nursing services. Secondly, we could maintain staff, which means we wouldn't do reductions. Third would be to do staff support for contract tracing. Fourthly, it's purchasing additional protective equipment such as face masks, face shields, hand sanitizer. And then we could also be upgrading the filters used in our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. And the next slide will be a translation of this slide. So I'll pause there for a moment as you read through it. Next slide, please. So the second bucket is how we address the impact of lost instructional time. And what the federal government is looking for here is evidence-based interventions. And some examples of those are going to be summer learning or summer enrichment, extended day, comprehensive after-school programs, evidence-based high-dosage tutoring, full-service community schools, mental health services, social emotional learning during the school day. And if you turn over to the next slide, it will be the same information, but in Spanish. So we'll pause there for a little bit. So if you go to the next slide, now this would be the third bucket, which is any of the remaining funds that we would have from ESSER. And so some examples of how we could utilize this funding could be to do virtual school, to continue paying for positions, and lastly, to do professional development. So those are just some examples of if there are any remaining funds after the first 2 buckets, these are things that we could utilize these funds for. we go to the next slide. So this is our timelines with regards to what our next steps would be. We can utilize this funding that they're providing to us over a 3-year period. So until September of 2024. So that would be for this current school year and 2 other school years after this. And our next steps are we're collecting information, input, feedback from all our stakeholders, including parents and staff and students as well. And we'll take all that information together. We're going to go to the board on October the 13th, which is next Wednesday. We'll take that information to them for that information as an agenda item with them. And then on the 27th is when we'll take the full plan with all the input together and the expenditure plan to the board for approval. And then within 5 days from there, we have to submit that plan to the county, the Contra Costa County Office of Education, for their approval as well. So that's the timeline process. I'd now like to pass it back on to how you can provide input and feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Haria. So a couple of you have put some things in the chat. So thank you very much for that. And we do have a survey. So if we can get the link to the survey, that would be fantastic. And then people could just click on it, maybe in the chat. Put the link to the survey so people could do that as well too. I believe it's also on the next slide. If we go to the next slide, I do believe we have the link to the survey. But sometimes, you know, so you can see this, it's just a tiny, and then we put it in the chat. That way you can just click on it directly as well too. But also, please put in ideas in the chat. Teachers to fill classrooms that currently have no teachers. We are trying. So that is not due to lack of funds or trying. That is due to not enough folks to fill some of the openings that we have. But we are going to, you know, we're continuing to fill those positions as well. Thank you. We did just hire a nurse. And so you'll start she started about a week and a half ago. And so we're really thrilled. We've been wanting to have a nurse for a while in our district. And one of the reasons why we have contracted nursing services at all of our schools, and we increased those hours this year. But with having a credentialed nurse now in our district, she will be able to have, you know, nursing students, help work in our schools and things like that. So we're really excited about what that can bring to our district as well. Having a nurse and having activities around financial literacy has been a very popular one as well too, in our students as well too. We do have some lessons that they do their senior year, but trying to do some more across the board, we've certainly heard a lot about as well too. A lot of mental and social health, expanding those. Lots of good ideas coming through there. Maybe we could put the link to the survey in again as people are scrolling down, and you can link right to that, and please take the survey. We'll also send the link to the survey to all of our families tomorrow, along with this presentation, so everyone can see that and then have an opportunity to take the survey. Thank you. Yeah, our CRAs, we do have some openings to add additional CRAs, looking at the feedback from Galaxy Tab to help support with that. Good idea. All right. Anyone have any closing thoughts before we wrap up here on the PUSD team? Okay.
No, just thank you again, everyone, for coming tonight. A lot of information we know, but please take the time to take the survey and definitely direct any family and friends that you know to take the survey who have kids in our children, scholars in our district as well.
And any friends and family that you know who are looking for a position. We have instructional aid openings. We would like to increase more of the aides for classroom support. We have openings for just part-time as well, if someone's looking for some more flexible or short-term hours for child nutrition services. We are always looking for bus drivers. As I stated earlier, we do still have a couple teaching positions open as well too. And we're always looking for substitutes. So it's a great way, even for our, people who are right out of college, our young people, it's a great way for them to have some flexibility in their schedule while being able to decide which days they can do substitute work as well.
There is a question about whether or not we would bring back laid off library staff and support staff. So these are one-time funds, not continuing funds, right?
Yeah, these are one-time funds that do end in the 2024. But we will consider all of our feedback. If you have more than one child, if you have time to do more than one survey, it's really helpful to us because sometimes the perspective of, an elementary, depending the ages that your children are in, and then the high school, there's different things that you want to give comments on. So if you have the time, absolutely, it would be really helpful to do the survey for each of your children. But if not, certainly do it the one time. Yeah, the job fair was really great. So, all of that, stopped with COVID, but we certainly will do that again. The internal job fair we have was a great way for us to be able to get people in and more people from the community for a variety of the positions. So we will definitely, when we're able to, we will definitely do the job fair again. Thank you for that feedback. Yep, multiple classes for summer school, adding some more enrichment classes as well too for summer school. That is also something that we can do as well. So thank you so much for attending. I will stay on for a little bit here as you put in more anything in the chat. And just want to thank you all, and also thank you for your support. You know, as a community, this has been a very trying time, but I'm so grateful for this community. I see how everyone has really come together and focused on our scholars, and we're really working together to make sure we keep those case rates going down and keep everybody safe and healthy. And so thank you so much. Enjoy your evening, and please reach out with any questions. Please take the survey, and just thank you so much. Buenas noches, muchas gracias para asistir. Yo tengo mucho gracias que tenemos una comunidad que tenemos mucho apoyo y todo el tiempo estamos enfocada en qué es el mejor por los niños, y por eso yo tengo mucho, yo soy muy, ¿qué es la palabra, Leticia? ¿Agraciado?
Agradecida.
Agradecida. Esa palabra siempre dame dificultad. Pues buenas noches, pasen una buena noche y muchas gracias por todo su apoyo.